All right, we are going to just give it a second for folks to hop on here. It's 10 right on the dot. I'm going to go to another slide and we want to hear from you all. So if you could use the chat box feature and introduce yourself, we would love to hear who is joining us and where you're joining us from. Just make sure when you click that little 2 in the chat feature that you click panelists and attendees. This will go to everyone. And we are going to introduce ourselves.
We have a lot of geographic distribution today too, which is really nice, all across the watershed.
Oh, we've got Champlain is in the room as well.
All right.
Nice.
Yay. I looked at some of your amazing entries last night. Those were very cool.
And Colleen, you may be going to talk about this a little bit later, but how long will that gallery be open?
That's an excellent question. And for a while.
Great. That's great. I didn't get to check out the entries and I'm very excited to do that.
And looks like we've got Keene Central joining us. And I think I just saw another Champlain classroom pop in here as well. So if you're just joining us, we're just doing some quick introductions in the chat. We're going to introduce ourselves in just a minute, but I will let you know that my name is Ashley and I'm going to get us kick-started here. I work at the University of Vermont with Lake Champlain Sea Grant and I use she, her pronouns. And so we're going to give it just 30 more seconds for folks that are just joining us in the room to let us know where they're zipping in from here on Zoom, and then we're going to get started. We are so excited to celebrate World Water Day today. Oh, Sandy. Hi, Sandy from Underhill. Okay, so here is what we are going to do today while we are together. So we are going to get started with a land acknowledgement in just a minute here. We're going to look at some of the cool submissions that we had come in from schools across the watershed. We're going to hear from Tom Collins from the Adirondack Watershed Institute, and Tom is going to talk a little bit about the Clean Water Act, and then I think maybe run an experiment with us on the line today. So that should be pretty cool. You'll have a chance to ask Tom some questions, and then we're going to hear who won what awards for World Water Day this year based on your fabulous entries. So let's get started here. So before we begin, we want to just acknowledge that we are all coming together from various places across the watershed, and our watershed has been stewarded for over 11,000 years and continues to be today for by a variety of Indigenous folks from the Abenaki tribe, the Mohawk Nation of the Iroquois, the St. Lawrence Iroquoians, and many other Indigenous people who call this place home today. And so I just wanted to share this little picture. This is a graphic from a cool tool called the Native Land Map. This is a map led by Indigenous folks that helps show different territories. So I can put the link in the chat, but this is kind of a neat tool to go online and check out and see which tribes call your area home and have for thousands of years. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to give the floor to Colleen Hickey from the Lake Champlain Basin program. And Colleen is just going to give a little intro to some of the folks that made World Water Day possible.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. As you know, we're celebrating World Water Day because it was a day that was created by the United Nations. This year's theme is groundwater, but we like to think of it as a general water celebration. We've got so many beautiful streams and rivers in the Adirondacks and in the Green Mountains that bring tons and tons of water, 3.8 million gallons regularly to Lake Champlain. So what we do on those upper portions of the watershed, like up there in the Keene Central School District in the Boquet Valley, or what we do on the land near Plattsburgh and Burlington, all matters. It all matters to the future health of Lake Champlain. So to recognize that, we always thought that one of the best ways to help the lake over time is to work by training teachers on lake issues. And many of the classes that are participating today have been fortunate enough to have their teachers care enough about Lake Champlain that they've gone through the training with us. We call ourselves the Champlain Basin Education Initiative. And you'll see on the left-hand side in that black text, CBEI partners. Well, who are some of those partners? Let's see. I'm from the Lake Champlain Basin program. We're one of those partners, and many of us have been partners since 1991. We have several of our staff on here today, including Stephanie and Ryan and Elizabeth, who assist in this work too. Shelburne Farms, I think, has Carrie on today. And Ashley, I can't see other folks' pictures. I don't know if we're giving a wave or not. We have Ashley from Lake Champlain Sea Grant, of course. We have the Elizabeth Lee from the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. How cool is that? They have an Elizabeth Lee down on the South Lake, and we have an Elizabeth Lee up here on the north end of the lake with our staff. We have Lori Fisher from the Lake Champlain Committee. We have Amy Demarest, who's one of our favorite long-standing teachers of all times for Lake Champlain. And Amy now has a business called Our Curriculum Matters. But she used to teach 5th grade, and she used to teach in college as well. So she knows the ins and outs of Lake Champlain because it's been one of her favorite topics. And the Community Sailing Center on the Burlington waterfront has also helped us a lot over time. So those are the main partners that we'd like to thank today. And most importantly, our partners are students and teachers who are joining us. So the exciting news is that we had schools from both New York and Vermont participating today. And we just wanted to give you a little tiny snapshot here. We have the Bocat Valley Central School District, and Erica Lower's class is on today with upcycled hydroponic planters. Pretty cool new program there. And 2 of her students have also submitted poems for consideration as part of this process. I should say all the pieces of art and writing and video are all part of our online program today, and those will be accessible all day long and beyond. From Champlain Elementary in Burlington, Vermont, we have Miss Malik's class and Miss Legault's class, and they did some really cool work on nature-inspired art and Making It Blue, which was a program that was 100% designed by grades 5 through 8 at Champlain Elementary. And when you check out that nature-inspired art from Miss Malik's class, it makes you feel like you're right at the shoreline creating that artwork with them. It's so peaceful. So thank you both for those submissions. Our homeschool program came in from the Gravelin family today. It was the amazing ice. You can see the student looking through the ice on Lake Champlain. I love that photo. That's the 3rd one down in the circles. And then Hunt Middle School. Check this cool stuff out. You know, you always think that STEM is hard. STEM learning is hard. These students from Hunt Middle School have made prosthetic fins for the fish. So they're learning how prosthetic limbs work by using fins as an example on fish, learning how they work and how they could help with mobility issues. Okay, let's see what the second part is. We've got Keene Central School in here. Woohoo! Look at this Atlantic Salmon Fish Flag program. They've developed 6 different posters which will feature the different life cycles of the Atlantic salmon. We'd like to give a shout out. There are 22 schools in the Adirondacks that raise Atlantic salmon. And we also raise Atlantic salmon in Hunt Middle School in Burlington. So way to go, Keene Central. And you'll see their beautiful Ted Harrison landscape paintings that's symbolized by that first circle on the top, and the beautiful colors where you merge the water and the mountains and the fields and forests was just really spectacular. So that came from Miss Welford's and Stacy Van Kampen's class and Jen Jika's class. And Miss Jika, I hope I pronounced that correctly, your last name. And then for the K to 4th graders from Keene Central, They created a series of water wisdom bowls, and you really should click through all of them. They're beautiful bowls. Most of the students are balancing them on their heads, and then there's a surprise in the last photo in that collection. So check it out. Plattsburgh High School, For the Love of Water, with Miss Sanal Patel Dam's class. She just is another amazing teacher who uses every opportunity to teach her students in grades 9 through 12 about the watershed. They go out with Ashley and her counterpart Nate Tracty from Sea Grant, and they go through the streams in the Saranac River and learn about macroinvertebrates. And they're also up at the Minor Institute learning about agriculture and water pollution problems that might result. And then Shelburne Community School, Miss Mayette's class for grades 5 through 8, they created a series of 17 water posters. And because we're online, Elizabeth Lee from our office put all of those up so you could view the beautiful artwork. And then in addition, there were 2 beautiful poems in there from students. So check them all out. We want to congratulate each and every student and classroom and your teachers for participating in World Water Day. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Wow, what an amazing array of different types of projects that were submitted. We have writing, we have art. We are going to put the link in the chat shortly for that gallery, and that gallery will be open so you can check it out later today. And also we'll make sure that you get that link so that you can take it home and share with your family or folks in the community as well. So now we get to welcome our keynote for today, who is Tom Collins. Welcome, Tom. Thanks for being here. And Tom is going to talk about clean water in the Lake Champlain Basin. And Tom is the Education and Outreach Program Specialist at the Adirondack Watershed Institute. He joined the team in 2022, so this winter, and he's originally from a small town in the Tug Hill region of New York and now lives in Saranac Lake. Tom has worked as an educator for various organizations in Colorado, Vermont, and here in the Adirondacks. He is invested in both connecting visitors and residents to issues that impact the region. Tom enjoys spending time outdoors with friends and family and taking advantage of all that the Adirondacks have to offer. So thank you so much for being here, Tom. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will let you take over.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley and Colleen. And thank you to everybody who's joining us today, both in the Adirondacks and in Vermont. My name is Tom. I'm the educator here at the Adirondack Watershed Institute. So today we're all zooming in from different parts of the Lake Champlain Basin. So if we look at this photo here, we have a beautiful photo of the Adirondack High Peaks. If you follow my cursor over here to the right, we look at Mount Marcy, which is the highest point in the Lake Champlain Basin, over to Algonquin Peak, which is the second tallest mountain in the Adirondacks. And over on the horizon in the distance, we can see Mount Mansfield and Camel's Hump, and we can also see Lake Champlain. So we're very fortunate here at the Adirondack Watershed Institute to call the place that we work the Adirondacks. The Adirondacks are a 6 million acre state park. It's the largest state park in the entire country. And it's about the same size as the whole state of Vermont. So it's a really big state park, and it's a mixture of public lands, which means it's accessible for everybody, and private lands for folks who live here and work and play here. So here's a map of the Lake Champlain Basin. So all of us today on this call are coming from different areas, either on the New York side or the Vermont side. And we're all connected by this big body of water that is Lake Champlain. So over here, this red circle is where we're located at the Adirondack Watershed Institute. So we're located on the College of Paul Smith's College, about 30 to 40 minutes from Lake Placid, if anybody knows where Lake Placid is. And this photo here is the backdrop of our campus. So water is central to our work, to our scientists, to our researchers. And we do a lot of our work, not only here on our campus, but throughout the Adirondacks and on Lake Champlain. So Lake Champlain, as I mentioned, a really large body of water, 120 miles from north to south. And about 600,000 of us depend on this body of water for drinking and for recreation and for all of those things that are necessary to us to live in this beautiful area. And some of you might be wondering, what is the Lake Champlain Basin? What is that watershed that connects us all? And it's essentially the entire area, this entire landscape that is all connected by precipitation and drainage through all the various rivers here, the Saranac River, the Ausable River, the Lamoille River, Winooski River, that all flow into Lake Champlain, that is the body of water that connects us all. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about clean water in this area and what it means to you and to me and to all of us that live here in the Lake Champlain Basin. So to start this out, I want to ask you all if you know where your drinking water comes from. So for me, when I first got into watershed issues and environmental science issues, I was just about the same age as you all. I had my 8th grade earth science class, an art teacher who loved to connect science and art together. And it really got me thinking about how cool it would be to understand where my drinking water comes from. And it actually came from a reservoir behind my house, about a mile behind my house. So I want you to all to take about a moment, about a minute or so, to submit in the chat where your drinking water comes from. If you know maybe where the reservoir it is, maybe what lake it is, or maybe some other sources of where your water comes from. And I'll give you all about a minute to do so. Great, so we have some awesome answers coming in. A lot of you are saying Lake Champlain, some are saying from a well, others are saying a mountain spring. And for all of us on this call, it's probably going to be a little bit of everything. Some of us in our class might get water from a well, some might get it from a source in their town or their village. Others might use drinking water from bottled water. But it's important to know that we're all connected in this area, for all of us on this call, through the Lake Champlain Basin, through various water bodies, reservoirs, rivers, streams, and ponds. So we're going to take a look at one of the areas that we study. So our team at the Adirondack Watershed Institute, our team of researchers and scientists spend a lot of time studying Mirror Lake and Lake Placid, which are located in the Olympic Village of Lake Placid. So I'm sure some of you might have been to Lake Placid before, maybe to go skiing at Whiteface or maybe for some other events in the community. But our scientists are really interested in understanding the complex relationship that Mirror Lake has with the people who live, work, and play here. So Mirror Lake is a really interesting case study for us because it's not as large as Lake Champlain. It's about 14,000 times smaller than Lake Champlain. So it's a small body of water. You can walk around it in about a mile, and it's home to many houses, it's home to schools, it's home to businesses, and it's often more similar to a lot of lakes and ponds that we might have on the school bus ride on our way to school, or we might have in our own community for those of us who don't live right on Lake Champlain. So Mirror Lake, one of the really interesting components that we're trying to understand is the relationship it has with salt. So Mirror Lake is a saltier lake than 9 out of 10 of the other lakes that we survey in the Adirondacks. So these high salt levels are chloride, and sodium. So this lake is really salty, even saltier than the larger Lake Placid behind it, where the majority of this village's drinking water comes from. and it's even saltier than Lake Champlain. So Mirror Lake is saltier than 97% of those other lakes, 9 out of 10. So that's really a salty body of water. So I want to ask you all another question, and feel free to submit this into the chat as well and take a moment or two, a minute or two to do so. Why do you think Mirror Lake here in Lake Placid would be saltier than maybe some of our other lakes in the Adirondacks or in Vermont, such as these two lakes here on the right of this screen? So we've got some answers rolling in here. Maybe something to do with humans. So that's a great idea. If we notice this picture here of Mirror Lake and Lake Placid in the background there, and the village of Lake Placid here on the left, we notice a lot of buildings in this picture, right? So a little bit less of a forested landscape that maybe these two photos have, more businesses, more roads, and more opportunities for people to be involved with clean water in Mirror Lake and the lake that surrounds them. So Mirror Lake actually is about 3/10 developed. So 34% of the land around Mirror Lake is fully developed, which means there's a building right on its shoreline, there's a sidewalk, there's roadways, and that brings in a lot of different variables to Mirror Lake. So in the wintertime, when it's really snowy, it's really icy, we need to de-ice our sidewalks. And a lot of the times we use salt, road salt, to do so. So although it's really important that we have a safe roadway and sidewalk for all of us to travel on, to get to school, to get to work, to get to our friends or families' houses, it also can have really big results on our quality of water and our waterways. So something our scientists here at the Adirondack Watershed Institute are trying to study and trying to get to the bottom of is just how much that road salt impacts our water in our wells, in our reservoirs, and even in Lake Champlain and some of the other large body of waters here in the Adirondacks and on the Adirondack coast. So our scientists did a sample from 500 people, just like you and I, who had wells at their houses. And of those 500 people, they found that 6 out of 10 had a high level of salt in their water. And this can have a lot of different problems for ourselves and for the animals and the plants that live in these lakes and ponds. And it can kind of give us some insight into just how much salt we're using on our roads. So although it's really important to keep our roads safe and de-iced, we put down about 190,000 tons of this salt every year just here in the Adirondacks alone. And if you think of just how much salt that is, a car weighs about 1 to 2 tons. So almost about the same amount of cars that would be laid down on our Adirondack roads or sidewalks that's just salt. So thinking about this in another way, if you were to stand here on this road and watch some of those snow plows go by for 10 hours, it would contain all the salt that we've put down on our roads in the past 40 years. So that's a lot of salt, about 10 hours worth of driving past us of salt that has been put down on our roads, and ultimately is going to end up in our lakes, in our ponds, and in our drinking water from our wells. So this graphic here is showing this process a little bit in a simpler way. So if we look at point number 1 here, we have our snow plow full of salt, and it's trying to keep our roadways nice and safe for all of us to drive to work or to school, maybe to go for a hike or to go skiing or to go fishing. And here's a good look at the spring, where it happens a lot here in the Adirondacks, where that salt is laid down on our roads. And as the cars drive by, they might splash that salt onto the side of the lake. And this salt that ends up on the side of the lake or directly in the lake is exacerbated by rainstorms or snowstorms or those mixed precipitation events that we're seeing a lot of these days, causing all that salt to run into our lakes and our ponds. And unfortunately, once it's there, it doesn't have too much of anywhere else to go. So it ends up having a lot of impact on our lakes by having a higher concentration. And if we look at our 4th bullet point over here, we see our houses, our school districts. So maybe this could be Burlington or Keene or Lake Placid. And that salt that's in our water is eventually going to go underground into our well, through groundwater, through runoff. It might make its way into our town or village water supply, and will end up in our faucets or in other areas of our house or our school and our day-to-day lives. So we've talked about road salt, and we've talked about how clean water is being studied by us here at the Adirondack Watershed Institute. But how is road salt pollution harmful to us and to all of us that rely on Lake Champlain and the Basin and all of the lakes and ponds that are within this entire watershed region? So for starters, it can cause us humans, to have some human health problems. So we might feel more tired, we might get sick a little bit more often, and we might not feel as good. And this is going to be noticed if you drink this really salty water for 30 or 40 years. So it would have long-term problems. It's also going to have disruptions to fish and other organisms. So earlier we looked at some photos from Mirror Lake, where our scientists and our researchers are studying salt and so many other water quality and clean water issues. And where we sample, this fish was swimming by one day, and we got a good photo of it from our underwater drone. And high salt levels are going to cause some problems for these fish and other organisms that that live in Mirror Lake and the surrounding lakes here in the Adirondacks and in Vermont. If you're on the school bus, or if you're driving to a friend's or family member's house, you might notice that sometimes on the side of the roads, the trees are a little bit reddish or orange in color. That might also be happening from that salt getting splashed from cars and vehicles, ending up on the leaves of those trees or the needles of those trees. And I'm sure all of you have seen a very rusty car, and my car included, from driving for many years on really salty roads here in the Adirondacks. Maybe your school bus. They do tend to rust a little bit faster with high levels of salt. But luckily, there's something we can all do to help protect clean water. So today we're celebrating World Water Day, which is super exciting. So excited to see all of your submissions and all of the work that you all have been up to this past school year. But there are some things that we can all do to help the lakes and ponds, the streams of Vermont and the Adirondacks, these lakes and ponds that drain into those rivers and eventually end up in Lake Champlain. So for starters, if you don't know where your drinking water comes from, maybe go on a discovery and see if you can find out from friends or family, or maybe from your teacher, your friends, where your drinking water comes from. And this might be from a well on your property, or who you live with's property. This might be for your school. It might be a certain reservoir, or it might be Lake Champlain itself. And then maybe find out if your drinking water has been tested to see if there's high levels of salt or other chemicals in your water. And then finally, you can talk to friends and family about protecting lakes and ponds and streams in your area. So it could be as simple as asking them to find out where their drinking water comes from. and maybe ask if their drinking water has ever been tested. This can be a really fun way to explore the local lakes and ponds and streams in our communities, in our backyard, or it can be Lake Champlain itself. But before we stop today's presentation, I want to do a little demonstration with you all just to show you exactly what this concentration of road salt looks like in Mirror Lake. So behind me, we have the lovely periodic table with some great items over here to help us take a look at just how concentrated Mirror Lake is with road salt. So we're going to take a look at this red spray bottle here, and I'm going to do 1 squirt for the concentration of road salt in a normal Adirondack lake. So this could be Upper St. Regis Lake or Lower St. Regis Lake, where our campus is located. This could be a lake or pond closer to Lake Champlain, and it could be Lake Champlain itself, but this is showing a healthy lake and its road salt concentration within that lake. So for a healthy lake, it would be 4 squirts. And if you can see, there's not really much of a change, if anything at all, from a little bit of salt in our lake. But if we're to look at Mirror Lake and how salty Mirror Lake is, we have Mirror Lake here. It's about 40 milligrams per liter, which is a number I don't expect anybody to remember, but it's about 200 times greater than a normal Adirondack or healthy Adirondack lake or stream. So it's a pretty dark lake. Now, it doesn't necessarily look like this in Mirror Lake, but this is a good tool to show us exactly how much salt is in Mirror Lake in comparison to Lake Champlain or Upper Saranac or Saranac, or some of the other lakes and ponds that are found throughout the Adirondacks. And another way to think about this would be by taking our lake or pond here, very healthy water body, a low concentration of salt. And here's how much salt, if you can see this weigh boat, you can hardly see anything in there, just a small amount. This is under a gram of salt here. And this is how much salt would be in a healthy lake or stream or pond here in the Adirondacks. So not too much floating around on the bottom there. But as I mentioned, it's about 200 times higher in Mirror Lake, that lake that we were looking at earlier. So that would be,
wow,
about this times 4. So if I were to keep adding more water, we would end up here. With about 200 times the concentration. So if you can see how cloudy this is, all that salt on the bottom here, that's an accurate representation of what Mirror Lake is experiencing right now with its road salt levels. So of course, there's a lot of other factors in clean water and water quality here in the Adirondacks, but road salt is one that we're really trying to get to the bottom of here at the Adirondack Watershed Institute. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today and to allow me to be here with you all. I think I'll give the floor back to Ashley and Colleen to see if they have some time for Q&A.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thanks, Tom. That was so interesting to see. I think I was shocked at how much salt that was and thinking about how salt also dissolves. So thinking about solutions and how solutions are made. And so watching that rock salt get broken down in the water makes me think about how hard it is to remove that salt once it is in the waterway. So that's why we have to be really careful about how we're applying that throughout the winter. So you can go ahead and use the Q&A or the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with, to toss some questions in for Tom. And Elizabeth Lee from the Maritime Museum is gonna go ahead and field those questions to Tom.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. That was really, really interesting. I've never seen that demonstration either. That is a lot of salt. Can you compare how much salt that is to how much salt is in the ocean? Is it saltier or how, like, what is it? If anybody's ever swum in the ocean, they can feel that salt and taste that salt. Is it as much as that?
That's a great question. So, normally the ocean is going to be a lot saltier even than Mirror Lake at its saltiest point. But I mentioned earlier a little bit about how Mirror Lake is 200 times saltier than another lake or stream or pond in the Adirondacks. But at its highest levels, at the days where we've gone the deepest in Mirror Lake to about 18 meters deep in some of our other lakes and ponds, we found a concentration of about 126 to 140 milligrams per liter. And again, I don't expect any of you to remember that number, but it gets up to about 1,000 to 2,000 times saltier than this lake. So we might not notice it while we're swimming in the lake, but we might notice it more so from when we're drinking the water. So if the water from Lake Placid or Mirror Lake was getting filtered and ending up in our drinking water, we might notice that that water tasted a little bit different, maybe less soft or a little bit saltier in our mouths, but it wouldn't quite be the same level as the ocean, which is a good thing.
Wow, still seems like a lot. So we had a great question from Keene Central School about would using sand instead of salt help this problem? What would happen to the salt if you used it on the road?
That's a great question. So there's a lot of research being done by scientists right now to try to minimize the amount of road salt that we use on our roads. It's really important that we have safe roadways, but it's also really important that we protect clean water that we drink and use for recreation. So finding that balance can be really difficult. And it's something we're still figuring out here at the Adirondack Watershed Institute and in other states such as New Hampshire and Maine, who are also dealing with a similar problem to us here in the Adirondacks and Vermont. Something that's been used in New Hampshire, which is fairly similar to us here in the Adirondacks and Vermont, is using a saltwater concentration on the roads before the storm. So if we know that there's a big snowstorm or ice storm coming in, we might put down that concentration of water and salt instead of pure salt to our roads, allowing for a little bit less salt to run off into our water. So that concentration would be closer to that first demonstration rather than the second one of being super cloudy. Some other alternatives are blending sand and salt, which has been used in a few places as a pilot program. And some places are using sand as the new alternative. However, it can still cause some of our roadways to get clogged up and really covered in sand, which is probably better than road salt, but can still have some other implications, other problems for maybe our communities, our towns and villages that have really icy roadways.
So this is kind of a problem of the past 150 years, right? Because we keep roads salted so the cars can go on them. But before that, it wouldn't have been a problem. So you can really see a change over time. I'm so interested that the way that you analyze what's happening is through chemistry. It's really, chemistry is so interesting, and just that simple demonstration is one that teachers can do in their classes anytime. It's really interesting. You can all be testing the concentration of your salt, of your water, or using really simple tests. That would be really interesting for teachers to try with their students, even your drinking water. I'm also kind of curious if you know of anything that in countries that are in the Arctic or places in the Arctic, or even the Scandinavian countries that have a lot of snow and ice, have cold temperatures. Do you have any idea how they treat their roads? Do they have the same problem?
That's a great question. Honestly, I don't off the top of my head. I do know that New York State uses more road salt than all our other states. So even looking at Alaska or Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, those states that have even more snow than we get here in Vermont and in the Adirondacks. But that's certainly something that we could all take a look at and see if those countries are using salt on their roadways at all, even.
That's throwing the glove down for teachers. I'm really curious if any of you teachers can go and find that out and let us know. We would be really interested to know how they treat their roads in Scandinavia or other North or Colorado, any other places that has the same kind of climate that we have. That'd be really interesting to find out. Well, this year's theme, Work Globally, for World Water Day, is about groundwater and protecting the groundwater. Could you explain a little bit what groundwater is, and if you ever see if the salt in the lake is impacting the groundwater around it?
That's a great question. So I mentioned earlier about how the majority of Lake Placid, the village, their drinking water comes from Lake Placid. So it's the larger lake in the background, and it's not from Mirror Lake itself, that lake that we were talking a lot about today. So the groundwater in between those two lakes is all a part of the Ausable watershed, which makes up the greater Lake Champlain Basin watershed. And groundwater itself is all that water that ends up either from our roadways into our soil, or from the lakes itself, going through smaller streams and bodies of water, making its way through our soil, through the earth below us, and into our wells, into maybe our sewage systems and other systems that make up our community. And this can impact our drinking water, in a few different ways, but predominantly it is seeping through those areas that we have tapped for our wells. So that drinking water in Lake Placid is going to be a little bit different since it's coming through a town system rather than a well. But if you look at some really small towns here in the Adirondacks or in Vermont, I like to think of some of our hamlets, maybe like Keene, where you're probably going to be getting a lot of your water from wells. You might notice that in different levels from one person's house to another, just based on where they're located, and those underwater channels of water that we know as groundwater.
So interesting. Actually, Colleen asked another interesting question that pertains to that, or before that. Can you see the salt in the water in the lake? Can you see it settling out, or can you see it if you were to just go and hold up a glass of water? Would you be able to see it?
It's a fantastic question. On Mirror Lake, there's so many drainages that will make their way into Mirror Lake from the road runoff. And that would be a really good opportunity to see the concentration. Once it's in the lake, it's a little bit harder to really pick up on. But if you pick up on those pipes as they're running into Mirror Lake, and you were to grab a sample of that on a really big stormy day, you might be able to pick up a little bit on that concentration with a cloudier sample, depending on how much salt was used directly in that area. So if a snow plow were to dump a lot of road salt coming around a corner, and that water was getting splashed immediately running down into Mirror Lake, you might notice that if it was a really high concentration. But most of the time, if you were scuba diving or swimming at the bottom of the lake and you were to grab a sample, you most likely wouldn't see a change in the cloudiness of the water.
So interesting. I think I'm going to tag back to Ashley now. We have a couple more things to do in our short celebration, and we encourage the teachers to keep looking and keep asking questions with your students about all of these things. And I think Tom's available by email if you want to contact him. Okay, Ashley, back to you.
Great. Okay, we are about to head into the most anticipated segment of our whole show here, our awards. But I wanted to show everyone, so this is the live gallery link. So we're going to put this in the chat so that you all have it, but this is how you can use this link. This is live on the web here through the Lake Champlain Basin program, and you'll be able to go in and look at all of these submissions. So we've organized them here, and you can click to the videos. If there are videos, you can click to see different kind of the whole spiel of what was submitted for each of these entries through this gallery here. So I just wanted to scroll through so folks could kind of see what that looks and feels like, so that later you can hop on and check that out. So be sure to check out some of these other entries. They were really top notch, from prosthetic fins to hydroponic systems, really quite a diverse array of stuff this year. You all rocked it. All right, Colleen, I think they're ready to hear about awards.
I love awards. And I think one of the nicest awards we could do is to put comments in the chat box for Tom Collins. This was his first program, I think, about the Lake Champlain watershed. He's new to the job and he needs to know what a great job he did. So if you want, while we're going through awards, feel free to give him a shout out. Okay, so let's see. Champlain Elementary School, you have 2 grades, 5 to 8 that participated. And sorry about that, phone is ringing. And we've been, racking our heads. It's been really tough with everything we're all dealing with out in the world. And we know that Champlain has a way of making things fun for your students. And we know that Miss Legault's class and Miss Malik's class are probably going out for more shoreline I almost said explosions, more shoreline explorations this spring. So we have decided to give you the gift of buying things for your own classroom needs. Doesn't mean you need to use them inside the classroom, but really designed for using it outside on field trips. So each of your classes will receive a really nice gift card for a company for which you can purchase things that you and your classmates might be able to use. Maybe you need nets to go look at macroinvertebrates, or maybe you need some beakers or some handheld little microscopes you can use in the field. So congratulations, Champlain Elementary. I think you'll be putting that to good use. Keene Central School, you had 3 classes, grades 5 to 8 participating, as well as K to 4. Well, I hate to tell you 5 to 8, but K to 4 won the big prize that everyone seems to like, which is an ice cream party. So they received books last year, and now we needed to do something fun with them. So they get an ice cream party for Miss McCormick's class as they head out to Crown Point. I think you guys go bird banding every year, and it seems to me you might be able to find a Stewart's ice cream store between your school and the campground. So you get ice cream. Grades 5 through 8, what we've done for you is we also know that all 3 of your teachers like to get students out in the field too. You are receiving a backpack that is stuffed with every sort of resource guide you can imagine for the fields, whether you're looking at macroinvertebrates, or maybe you're going to explore vernal pools and wetland areas, or you're going birding as part of your trip. This is a pretty cool backpack. And with the 3 grades, or the 3 classrooms in grades 5 to 8, you'll be able to use those jointly. So enjoy those. Send us a picture if you're using some of those guides in the field. We'd love to call out either you guys or Champlain as you're out and about around the watershed. Hunt Middle School, Boquet Valley Central School District, you both also had grades 5 to 8, and we don't think that we have awarded the Dino Light. It's that really cool microscope that blows things up on a much larger scale. So you're each getting a Dino Light and the stand for your classroom. And if you've never used one of those before, we have them at the resource room down at Echo. We use them all the time. Our colleague Cynthia pulls plankton samples in the springtime on Fridays, and students and the public look at plankton samples through that scope all summer long. So it's a pretty cool tool, and we think you'll find lots of uses, again, from looking at bugs to water quality samples to plants that you might find in the field and you want to investigate further. Shelburne Community School, you also submitted a really great array of artwork and 2 videos as well. And because of the number of entries that you provided, we wanted to award you with that same Dino Light and stand. We have not given Shelburne Community School one of those before, and we're not quite sure if you have them, but you are also right down near the lake and have the opportunity to explore the outdoors all the time too. Do you see a theme here? Boy, all these teachers and their students, they're all getting outside. They're all getting out to enjoy the lakes, the rivers, and the mountains. And that's really the best way to explore the Lake Champlain Basin. Miss Malik's class will be receiving binoculars and a couple of birding books. They're guidebooks that high school students can use that will help them prepare for college. They go to the fields up at the Minor Institute, so they're going to see one type of the different types of field birds, the grass birds that live in that area, versus going down to explore the shoreline. They're going to see other types of birds. So they'll actually pick up a pair of bird guides and binoculars to help them with their work. And our homeschool entry, well, congratulations to that great exploration of ice this winter. And you will receive a lovely bird book as well. And that's because in your entry, you talked about the fact that you didn't see any birds out that day. It was a cold winter day, but sometimes you might be lucky to see a snow bunting or another bird that likes to inhabit the shoreline area in the winter. So we're giving you that bird guide to make sure that happens too. So there we have it. You all did an amazing job with your entries. We hope you come back in next year. You'll be 1 year older, but you can then remind all of your teachers that in March, it's World Water Day. And next year, hopefully we're all out of the pandemic and we're back to having a lot of fun. And there are a lot of people represented on this screen who would love to come to your classroom or help you on a field trip. So enjoy your resources that you have this year. And we look forward to working with you again next spring. Thank you very much, everyone. And you should give yourselves a round of applause. Nice job. Thank you to our partners. Yay.
Thanks, everyone. Huge round of applause. Thanks for Pearl is excited about World Water Day, my parent. Thanks for being here with us, and we hope you all have a great day. Congrats on all of our winners today for World Water Day.